Hello everyone. අද මේ වීඩියෝ එකේ මම web component development 1 කියන subject එක යටතේ අපිට දීලා තියෙන වීඩියෝ series එකේ තුන්වෙනි වීඩියෝ එක තමයි explain කරන්න යන්නේ. මේකෙදී තුන්වෙනි වීඩියෝ එකේදී අපිට දීලා තියෙන topic එක තමයි how to use session and session tracking with session configuration. මේකෙදී අපිට කියලා තියෙන්නේ session configuration එකත් එක්ක කොහොමද session සහ session tracking කියන එක use කරන්න කියලා explain කරන්න. පළවෙනියටම අපි බලමු මොකද්ද මේ session එකක් සහ session tracking කියන්නේ කියලා. Session simply means a particular interval of a time. Session tracking is a way to maintain a state, data of an user. It is also known as session management in servlet. HTTP protocol is a stateless, so we need to maintain state using session tracking techniques. Each time user requests to the server treats the request as the new request. So we need to maintain the state of an user to recognize to particular user. HTTP protocol and web servers are stateless. What it means is that for web server every request is a new request to process and they can't identify if it's coming from client that has been sending request previously. But sometimes in web applications we should know how the client is and process the request accordingly. For example, a shopping cart application should know who is sending the request to add an item and in which cart the item has to be added, or who is sending the request to add an item and in which cart the item has to be added, or who is sending checkout request, so that it can change the amount to correct client. Session is a conversion state between client server and it can consist of multiple request and response between client and server. Since HTTP and web server both are stateless, the only way to maintain a session is when some unique information about the session ID is passed between server and client is every request and response. ඊළඟට බලමු මොකද්ද මේ session tracking කියන්නේ කියලා. Session tracking is a way to maintain state data of an user. It is also known as session management in servlet. HTTP protocol is stateless, so we need to maintain state using session tracking techniques. Each time user requests to the server treats the request as the new request, so we need to maintain the state of an user to recognize the particular user. HTTP is stateless, that means each request is considered as the new request. ඊළඟට session tracking techniques මොනවද කියලා බලමු. මේකෙදී session tracking techniques හතරක් කියනවා. Cookies, hidden form field, URL rewriting, HTTP session. මෙතනදී මම පොඩි පිච් එකක් දාලා තියෙනවා මේ session tracking techniques වලට අදාළව. ඊළඟට බලමු අපි මේ session tracking techniques වල පළවෙනි technique එක cookies. A cookie is a small piece of information that is persisted between the multiple client requests. A cookie has a name, a single value, and optional attributes such as comment, path and domain qualifiers, a maximum age and a version number. ඊළඟට අපි බලමු කොහොමද මේ cookie එකක් වැඩ කරන්නේ කියලා. How cookie works. By default, each request is considered as a new request. A cookie in cookie technique, we add cookie with response from the servlet. So cookie is stored in the cache of the browser. After that, if request is sent by the user, cookie is added with the request by default. Thus, we recognize the user as the old user. ඊළඟට session tracking වල තියෙන දෙවෙනි ටෙක්නික් එක තමයි URL rewriting කියන්නේ. In URL rewriting, we append a token or identifier to the URL of the next servlet or the next resource. We can send parameter name value pairs using the following format. A name and a value is separated using an equal sign. A parameter name/value pair is separated from another parameter using the ampersand. When the user clicks the hyperlink, the parameter name-value pairs will be passed to the server. From a servlet, we can use getParameter method to obtain a parameter value. HTTP session කියන්නේ session tracking techniques වල තියෙන තුන්වෙනි ටෙක්නික් එක. මේකෙදි කියන්නේ in such case container creates a session ID for each user. The container uses this ID to identify the particular user. An object of HTTP session can be used to perform two tasks. They are bind objects. We can manipulate information about a session, such as the session identifier, creation time, and last access time. How to get the HTTP session object? HTTP session object ගන්න කොහොමද? The HTTP servlet request interface provides two methods to get the object of HTTP session. Public HTTP session getSession returns the current session associated with this request, or if the request doesn't have a session, creates one. Public HTTP session getSession boolean create returns the current HTTP session associated with this request, or if there is no current session and create is true, returns a new session. Commonly used methods of HTTP session interface. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් භාවිතා කරන HTTP session interfaces. Public string getID, it means returns a string containing the unique identifier value. Public long getCreationTime returns the time when the session was created, measured in milliseconds since midnight January 1, 1970 GMT. Public long getLast access time returns the last time the client sent a request associated with the session as the number of milliseconds since midnight January 1, 1970 GMT. public void invalidates this session, then unblind any object bound to it. Session configuration. Sessions configuration කියන්නේ the web.xml of the web application can be adjusted to set the timeout of all HTTP sessions. Keep in mind that time value is specified in minutes. Thank you.